Weather Scope.
Winter storm warnings are in effect in Chicagoland, where you're being hit with heavy snow, high winds, and tumbling temperatures. And there's a cleanup underway in Robeson County, North Carolina, after severe weather moved through last night. Good morning. Welcome to WeatherScope. I'm Mark Mancuso. There's a lot of active weather to cover from the Great Lakes to the East Coast. There's snow from Michigan to Missouri, with Chicago getting most of the action. Meanwhile, parts of the Northeast are getting some bursts of heavy rain flooding around New York City. But first, an update on all that snow with Marshall Cease, the Chicago kid. Take it away, Marshall.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Boy, I remember these days growing up in Chicago. It's one of those things where you get about 2 inches of snow per hour, and it's very, very quick. Some of the roads in good shape, though, in those days and now, and that's because those road crews do such a sensational job. This thing hit really quick this morning, though. We're going to show you just what it looks like in Chicago. This is what it looked like early this morning as that snow turned from rain, and we even had some thunder snow this morning in the Chicago area, and there's still a possibility of that in South Chicago, for example, down around Lakeshore Drive to the south over toward Michigan City. Also, Kristen Dodd, who was in Milwaukee earlier, headed towards Chicago right away when the snow began, is now north of Chicago on just off of Interstate 94 at the Deerfield exit, about 3 miles north of where I live, Kristen. I remember, I think that site behind you is a familiar one to me. I'm just trying to figure it out, and I think I remember it in snow like this, too. Tell me about what it's like.
Well, to be precise, we are on Lake Cook Road, which meets up with Interstate 94 and 294, and if you take 94 from this point, you're heading into the Edens Parkway. We decided to stop here, which is north of downtown Chicago, simply because the roads were just getting a little bit too bad for us to continue to travel on. I want to thank my crew of Chuck and Dan and Randy and Simon to allow us to get us at least this far to be able to show everyone at home exactly what it has been like in Chicago. Now, behind me again, this is Lake Cook Road. Traveling along here is slick, but of course folks in Chicago are used to traveling on snow, so it's not causing too many problems along this stretch. You can see down here, though, where we do have plenty of ice on the roadways, and it's not really the main portions of the road that we see the problems, but the exits and also the secondary roads. Plenty of ice here, as we have not been able to get the plows out on some of those exits, and also in some of the rural areas too. You can see the blowing snow and quite windy gusts up to 50 miles an hour, a wind chill now down to 0. So a lot of problems happening right now in Chicago, and it doesn't look like this is going to be wrapping up anytime soon. Marshall?
Thanks, Kristen. It certainly does not. My brother-in-law lives about 3 miles down the road behind you. And for those viewers that are watching that are not familiar with Chicago, that's the road that borders Cook County, which is home county to Chicago, and Lake County, some of the northern suburbs. And the snow is coming down heavier there. This is one of the biggest problems in the Chicago area when you get rain changing to snow, especially late at night and then cold air moving in after. Even with salt trucks out early, very difficult to keep up with it. They'll be trying to keep up with it later today. Heaviest snow right now is just to the, includes Kristen and to the south, down through Springfield and Bloomington and Decatur, Illinois. We have snow blowing at what they call a quarter of a mile visibility, which makes it snowing at about 2 inches per hour. And all of that snow is going to continue for much of the morning hours, probably tapering off a little later today. Here's where Kristen was located, right along the border between those two counties. Now, notice the wind trajectory, too, down the full length of Lake Michigan. So lake snow advisories, or lake shore advisories, have been issued by the National Weather Service in Chicago. We're expecting 10 to 15-foot waves, and that will affect Lakeshore Drive in South Chicago, and that advisory extends all the way almost to the Wisconsin border to Michigan City, Indiana. And expectation is for some flooding in that area. How much additional snow are we going to get? Somewhere between 3 to 6 inches in this area. I wouldn't be surprised to get significantly more here, where we do have lake-enhanced snow for some of those that are familiar with the lake effect snowbelt areas around southern portions of Lake Michigan. That storm is really wrapped up significantly, and as it moves to the northeast, it's going to bring some heavy snow to southeastern Michigan. Looks like about 2 to 4 inches. The winds are incredibly brisk as well. They've been gusting to over 50 miles per hour, and earlier today over 60 miles an hour in some cases. And that very cold air is going to be headed toward the Chicagoland area, which will drop the wind chills similar to what we see there, where it's 20 degrees below zero in Minneapolis, St. Paul, for example, and even colder out in Iowa. Also, there is a blowing snow advisory for eastern Iowa, and if you're traveling any of the east-west arteries, be very careful. They will be the most treacherous. We'll be back talking with Kristen again in a half an hour. If you need more information, check in with weather.com if you're close to your computer. Meanwhile, we had severe weather in Florida and tornadoes, and we also had heavy rain in New York, and Mark has all those details in the studio.
Thank you, Marshall. 5 to 10 inches of snow on the ground in Chicago. 2 to 4 inches of rain has fallen in New York City. Flood warnings are out in Bergen County, New Jersey through the midnight hour, and also in New Haven County in Connecticut. It's been a rough morning in the Northeast as winds and rains have been on the increase and coming through in waves. And it could be a very difficult afternoon if we get a little sunshine in these areas right here. Cold front pretty much in this position right here, and if we can break out into the sun, we could be looking at severe storms in Jersey and southern New England. Winds, though, on the increase. You know, around Boston, you said, not much wind here. Just down the road, we have the warm front. And this warm front has moved up to the north. Unfortunately, this is an older map, but the warm front right now is pretty much in this position right here. Plymouth, Massachusetts, temperatures upper 50s. Boston, Massachusetts, lower 40s. Taunton, Massachusetts, upper 50s. Then as you get up towards Worcester, lower 40s. Can you tell that there's a front in the vicinity? You will know, because once this front goes by, the winds start to gust 30 to 50 miles an hour in the warm sector. And in the warm sector, we're watching this band of heavy showers and thunderstorms come roaring up. This has moved into Hartford and passed through Islip. Winds could gust up to 30 to 40 miles an hour, this line. As it moved through New York City, winds gusted over 50 miles an hour. You can see more strong storms just offshore. Main wind shift line over here, and until that passes, there will be the threat for some heavy showers and thunderstorms in this warm sector, which continues to surge its way up into the New England region. Here you can see the isotherms, and this is pretty much where the warm front is right now, and that's headed right up to the Canadian border. To the south, well, just the opposite. Cold air is swinging in behind our front, so we can say goodbye to the mild air. Here's where the front is. Behind it, the air cools, and there's light showers. But last night, there were strong storms, severe storms that moved through North Carolina and through Florida. And here's the scene in Osceola County. They're cleaning up after a possible tornado touchdown last night. High winds ripped into this carport and home. Other cars in the neighborhood were also damaged by flying debris. And as that line of storms marched down through the peninsula, we've had numerous reports of tornadoes and